All right, guys. So tonight we are going to be speaking with Back Row Radio, which is an account that I probably you haven't heard of. That's why I want to introduce you to it. I want to talk to Matt about kind of their history of how they grew it. Way back, kind of a backstory. Way back, I'm still on Twitter, but honestly, I don't use Twitter. So a long time ago, I was on Twitter. I used Twitter a lot, and there were a bunch of Christian anonymous Twitter accounts over there. And Back Row Baptist was one of them. That's what it was called, Back Row Baptist. And Back Row Baptist grew. I mean, it was like huge. It was like the epic Christian. He was like the epic Christian memes of Twitter. I mean, he had a crazy amount of followers. I think he's still got quite a few over there. But there was a whole bunch of accounts, and he was one of them. And he's moved over. He's got a little bit on Instagram, and their whole thing, he's kind of developed it into Back Row Radio now. So we're going to talk to him tonight kind of about what that looks like, kind of how they grew it, what it is. So we'll see here if I can add him. All right, he sent me a request, thankfully, because I could not get that thing to initiate nothing. So it's going to connect. Hey.
Where am I at? What's the camera?
We can see. Oh,
wrong
there
camera.
You are.
My bad.
You're good.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Thank you for sending me a request because I kept trying to invite you and it would not let me do it, and it happened.
Yeah, I saw you were struggling a bit.
It happens all the time, man. I don't know what. Anyway, long story short, you're here. Thank you. Thanks for being on. Appreciate you coming on here.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
Excited, man. I'm excited. Sweating profusely, but excited.
You're good. Ain't nothing to sweat about. Unless you don't have your air on, then you need your air on. But so I want to introduce you to the people that watch this live or watch it later. Kind of your account. I explained. I don't know when you jumped on. I explained a little bit before. About
I caught it all.
Okay, good deal. I knew you from Twitter and stuff. But give us kind of your story because it's been really interesting to kind of watch your account develop into what it is now.
Yeah, it's been a weird several transitions. I'll try and be as brief as possible, but there's a lot of steps.
Hey, you're good.
So
an hour.
started in March of 2013. Back then, there weren't a whole lot of Christian anonymous accounts on Twitter, at least that were like popular. You had your Church Curmudgeon, you had your Bitter Blue Betty, you had your Reverend No Respect, a couple others at that time that were hitting the high numbers. And so it was March. It was some Sunday night. We were doing Saturday. We were doing an Awana Olympics thing going on in our church, and I was running sound for like the ceremony. It's like this 2-hour-long thing. I had 6 minutes of work to do, and then the rest of the time is just them talking on a single microphone. So it's like set it and forget it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm on Twitter. I'm reading through all these. And I'm like, man, it would be really fun to do one of these, anonymous accounts. Uh-huh. And so I didn't want to be constrained to like a character, Church Curmudgeon, he's like the grumpy old deacon man, and Bitter Blue Betty's the old lady, secretary, whatever. So I thought of the phrase Back Row Baptist, which is something that my pastor would always, use as a joking term, all you Back Row Baptists back there, the Holy Spirit can't reach back there, stuff like that. And so I'm like, well, it'd be cool. I could do some snarky, satirical, self-deprecating humor about Christian culture, and that I wouldn't be tied into a specific character that I had to play along with. So I'd have a wide swath of things to make jokes about. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Not expecting it to do anything. I made the account real quick, threw up a cheap graphic. Back Row Baptist, couldn't believe it wasn't taken already. Took it. And threw out like my 10 best off-the-cuff jokes, still sitting in this sound booth during the Awana thing. Another really small, recently started account, I think it was called Church or Volunteer Worship Leader or something like that. He had made friends with the guy who ran the Church Curmudgeon account and made him aware of me immediately. And so I'm in there. I've been doing this for like 30 minutes, and then Church Curmudgeon, the biggest Christian Anon account out there, tweets at me and then makes all of his thousands and thousands of followers aware of my existence. So before that, like, hour and a half long meeting was over, I'm sitting in a sound booth. I have 200 followers already. So I'm hitting the ground running. By the end of the day, I had 1,000. And that just kept going. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing this now. So
I've got people. I might as well do this.
Yeah, it has happened. I have arrived. So
So
I'm doing my best.
important you feel when you have 1,000
Right.
Twitter followers.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known Christian accounts that never reach 1,000, and I'm like, man, that would have stunk. So this was just all very conveniently put together that that happened, and so I'm very grateful for it. And I'm doing this. You do this for the whole year. By the end of the year, by December, we're like a week away. It's just Christmas just happened, I think. And I'm like, if you guys can get me to 10,000 followers before the end of the year, I'm going to post a picture of my face for 1 minute and then delete it.
This God.
And so everyone thought that it would come like right up to the end, and it happened on like the 27th or something. And we're getting there. It's like three people away on tweeting, oh man, I'm really going to have to do this, aren't I? And it became like this weird pseudo-celebrity moment where I had hundreds of people just waiting, people typing stuff like, I got to go to a meeting in 10 minutes, but I'm not leaving until I see your picture.
See your face.
And I'm like, y'all are going to be really disappointed. But
I think that's how we all feel. Like, all of us are
Right,
still,
yeah.
like, even the people I know that are still anonymous are like, I don't think you're not going to be excited.
Not good looking at all. We're all just weird, round, bearded people.
Yeah.
So we hit it. I throw my picture up for exactly 60 seconds, and then I delete it. Bunch of people like, oh, I missed it. Oh gosh, I've been refreshing for an hour. It was just really fun. I was having a blast. And then fast forward to March or April the next year, 2014. It's been a year. I've got about 14,000 followers, and I feel God just pounding on me for weeks saying, if you revealed who you are and shared your testimony, that's potentially 14,000 people in there. Somebody's going to need to hear it. And I'm fighting with him on this because I don't like it. And I'm not going to get into my full testimony. If you want to see it, you can find it on YouTube. It's Matthew Coker's testimony. It should be easy to find. Look for the guy that looks like me.
Just connect the dots.
But essentially, I had, and it's a bit embarrassing, but I've always come right out with it. I had an addiction to pornography. It was a bad one. It started when I was really little, before I'd even hit puberty. And I had never really dealt with it. I came to Christ when I was a teenager because of it, because I was afraid that I was going to get stuck in that with a hardened heart and whatnot. But I still never dealt with it. I kept putting it off. I kept using that as my security blanket, my thing to run to. That was my idol in life. And I let it get so bad that shortly after I was married, I nearly lost everything. It nearly cost me everything. And so, like I said, you can go see the whole story later. But, my testimony is not really one aimed at unbelievers because, that happens very early in my story. My testimony is more aimed towards the believers who are still struggling, still addicted to one thing or another, and feel like that there's some hurt, habit, or hang-up that is just keeping them from being who God wants them to be. And I had been in Celebrate Recovery, which is a program based around that. It's a Christian 12-step program. And shared my testimony many times there. And then that's where I feel that's where God was leading me. And I hated that. I didn't want to do it. I don't even like sharing it at CR where it's, safe and everybody's expecting it. And so I eventually gave in. I started a blog called Back Row Online, put it out there, put my name out there. First thing on there was my testimony. Expected to lose a whole bunch of followers immediately.
Because
any change, not just for what the testimony was about, but just because any change like that, people don't like.
Well, yeah, your content, they expected one thing and you were giving them something else. So, yeah.
So I didn't really lose any followers. In fact, I gained a lot more based on that, which was really cool. But I did my best to keep the Twitter account separate from everything else that we were starting. So Back Row Baptist at Twitter, all jokes, all the time. Tried to be as funny as possible, as often as I could. But we started that blog, and we did like this humor and healing kind of thing together, where we did a lot of encouraging stuff, and we did a lot of funny stuff. because we wanted people to, yes, be encouraged, yes, find comfort and find stories of people that are struggling just like you, and hope that things can change. But we also wanted people to just take a break from life and the seriousness of everything weighing down on you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be funny, and that's what a lot of the Christian Anons and the Christian Instagram accounts and all the meme pages and all that. That's kind of what it's become. It's become a cathartic release of all of this seriousness in our life. And poking fun at ourselves more than anything, which is the best, which is what I really like. I hate it when we focus on like unbelievers and politics and all this. Let's make fun of ourselves and our own foibles, so that way we can all kind of chuckle together. So we're doing that. It's going great. I get a whole bunch of other people on there. A lot of my friends who are in Celebrate Recovery, get a couple pastors to write with us. We're writing all this content. A little bit later. A couple of my guys were like, why don't we turn this into a podcast? And this was when like the podcast boom was coming back. They were becoming really popular again. They died off a bit when I was in college or after I was in college. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, let's give it a shot. And we start the Back Row Baptist podcast. And it wound up being a relative success, like everything. I haven't been the super popular, the most popular, anything ever, but mildly popular is great. I remember on Twitter, people.
Everything you were putting out. I mean, you were doing really, really well.
Yeah. Still, I've never caught up to Church Curmudgeon, and I never will. Dude's still killing it, making coffee out there, everything. But we get a couple thousand people at least on every episode, and more if it's a hotter topic. And that was really cool. And so we still try to do that balance of, we do a serious topic that we talk about, but we'd also have a lot of humor leading up to it, and sandwich in between, try to be funny and serious at the same time. And it worked really well for us. About the third episode in, though, I had the idea, what if we feature some independent Christian artists? Those that might never get their stuff on the radio, might never be heard otherwise. Let's put them in front of a couple thousand ears and see if we can get them some traction. Because I've always loved radio. I come from a radio family. My granddad on my mother's side was in radio. My dad was in radio. He even worked for ABC News Radio in New York before I was born. Really, really been in my blood from both sides of the family. And so I'm like, let's do that. That'll be my little tilt to radio, and I'd be able to minister to these artists and maybe their musical minister to our listeners. And we had a lot of artists jump on that right away, like a couple dozen really quickly. So we had this huge catalog of these songs that are all amazing that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And so we did that. Every episode we would do all of our like funny stuff. We do a game, do some funny thing, and then before we get into the big topic, we do a transition with a song. And then we did that for like 3 years. We made about 150 episodes, and
oh, what happened? Guys, that was really sad. All right, we'll give him a minute to jump back on. In case you're just jumping on now, there he is. I don't know what happened to him. Let's reconnect here. He'll pop back on here in a second. I bet he got a call.
Flip again.
Yeah, what happened? We lost you.
I don't know what happened. I was talking, and then suddenly I heard my own voice because the video was catching up to where it was at. It was really weird. Okay. So picking up, a lot of artists wanted to do this. It was great. We did it for 3 years, 150 episodes. About the 7th episode, my co-host, Megan Oakes, joined with me, and so she was in every episode as well. She's one of my best friends. And we would have this rotating group of people, all of our friends from the blog, come in, talk, real fun stuff. 3 years into it, I start getting a little bit more itch of, what if we could start an online radio station to feature these artists? Something that would stream all the time, people would be able to hear it. And so we're looking into that, and we found out we would have to buy licensing that would cover everything. So I was like, well, if we're going to buy licensing at all, then let's just play everything. Let's be a radio station, a Christian radio station that plays every genre of Christian music out there and heavily features independent Christian artists as well. And so I've got this huge collection of my own music, a couple thousand songs that I thought were worthy to go on there. So that's where we started. So essentially, the station started as my own personal playlist on shuffle.
Yeah.
And it works so well. I have people comment all the time, like, I never thought that I'd be able to handle hearing a Avalon song and then a Disciple song right after it. but it works really well.
Yeah.
And so that's where we started. We started this. We started gathering more and more music. We got more and more indie artists interested in it. And we started wanting to focus on also playing stuff that you would never hear on the radio, even like theme-wise. Almost never anyway. You know, I don't like, we like to poke fun at K-Love and radio stations like that, but I don't really like to diss them because they do a lot of good work. But you know, they have that whole theme of positive, encouraging K-Love.
Yeah,
and
they've got
because of that subset, and most of the mainstream radio stations seem to be going in that direction now, there's a whole swath of Christian music you never hear. Sometimes you want to hear like NF, you know, someone who's got battles with depression and not feeling like he's earned things and you know, all these different internal battles and screamings. Yeah, you'll never hear NF on K-Love. If you want to hear something from Skillet, that's not one of their like ballads that they've re-recorded for K-Love, you know, something like that. So Christian rap, that's not Toby Mac. Where is it at? You know, it's hard to hear it anywhere on Christian radio. So we're like, let's just do that, man. Let's make this huge mix, and it's been working really well. So we play rock, we play rap, we play dance, EDM stuff, remixes that you'll never hear anywhere else. We got some folk, we got some, you know, Jamaican style music. We got all kinds of stuff going on.
Absolutely everything.
Right, absolutely everything. Not, you know, it's not equal. Not every genre has an equal amount of time, but we do sneak it all in there. And, you know, we found out, like, with the heavy metal stuff, there's a limit, there's a line that you can reach to play, like, in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, if there's too much of the stuff, now I'm getting a phone call. All right. If it's got a lot of that stuff in there, then people just turn it off. So we relegate the really screamy stuff to its own show on Saturday nights, but we still get pretty loud. It's still pretty good stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of where it's folded. It's gone from a Twitter account, which we did retire this year. We retired Back Row Baptist.
I saw that, yeah.
Just a few months ago, we folded it into the Back Row Radio account. We're still telling jokes, though. We're still doing some joke stuff intermixed with the radio stuff. And like you said, we're on Instagram now, and we have a Facebook group as well that's just for memes, and it's called Back Row Baptist Church. That's got a few thousand, I think we're coming up on 5,000 people, which is really fun. It's a fun thing. So it's still in that mix of humor and healing. The podcast, we retired as well when we really got started with the radio station, and it became a morning show. So Mo and I switched from doing that podcast 1 hour once a week to essentially 4 hours worth of recording to spread out through the mornings of each week. So we quadrupled our work. I can see why you had to
get rid of the Twitter account and everything else. Just time-wise, there's no way
tiring
to get everything.
Oh. Yeah. And in addition to all that, we've created board games, we've created card games, we've written books, we've done compilations of things, we've made our own music. We had a YouTube show for a while. We've got it's just so much stuff that we've tried to do that we can't keep up with all the time. But the radio station is our baby, and it's going really well, and we're enjoying it. And I think that's most of the story.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure when you were sitting in that sound booth creating a Twitter account, you thought, man, I'm going to have a radio station someday. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. No, I never thought. And, you know, it is different. It's an online radio station. There's a quintillion of those out there. I understand that. But we are striving to be something different, because there's not a whole lot of radio stations out there that do what we do. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of radio stations that don't just focus in on one style, but try to please every palate at the same time. Like the mascot that we use is a little ice cream cone dude with 3 scoops of different flavors, and our tagline is Christian music in every flavor. Yeah. You know, so we're trying. It's not about pleasing everybody, but it's about showing everybody that all this music is good.
Yeah,
there's so much of it that you're missing. Yeah.
Now, just before we get into the next question on it, so where can people find that to stream it? Because, for example, the reason I say that is because I know when I was a youth pastor, we would stream music offline before service started every week, and this sounds like it's a nice little mix of everything. So if somebody wanted to do that, where could they stream that from?
To start with, backrowradio.com. That's the main place to start when you go on from a browser for on your phone. And that's also the best place to stream on both of those cases. You won't have any drops or anything like that. We do have, and we're actually in the process of switching our apps over We have a brand new app in the Android market, but it's so new that it doesn't come up when you search it. So currently, when you search Backward Radio in Android or iPhone, you'll see an app with the logo that looks like my hat here. It looks like that. That is the old app, which is good, but it's not perfect. We didn't build it, and the stream drops out occasionally depending on how good your Wi-Fi or data is. But we have a new app coming up. If you want the direct link to that, go to backrowradio.com, and you'll see the Android link will be a direct link to the new app, which is much better, much more stable. And the iPhone app we're still working on. Hopefully it'll be up in the next few weeks. That's a whole nother bear. Yeah. You have to have a Mac computer to even submit an app for the iPhone, which I think is stupid. But
I tried to build apps for iPhone, and it's a headache. It's so
it's awful. So we're in the middle of that, but the old app still works on that too, or just go on to backrowradio.com.
All right, so now as far as that whole story, obviously you could probably pick out a whole bunch of different stories just from your whole arch of what's happening. But give us an example, because I love to ask people this question that have like social media accounts that do things like you and I do. What things have happened because you've had that account? What stories have come out of it that God's used that to touch somebody's life that you would have never thought this had the ability to do that?
Sure. As I stated, early on, about a year into it, I shared my testimony, which was focused on the pornography issue. Mm-hmm. I assumed that I would get a lot of people who are struggling with that issue. A lot of guys coming to me telling me about, they struggle with that too, and asking some questions about how the process was for me, the road to recovery for me was. I assumed I'd get a lot of that. I got a few of those. Mm-hmm. I got a ton of messages from men and women who are just dealing with depression, dealing with anything that's hindering them from being who God wants them to be, and telling me that my openness to share my testimony, which again I hate doing, was inspiring for them, encouraging for them. And it's not my story. It's the reason that I feel compelled to tell it, even when I hate it, is because it is such a story of how I nearly lost everything, and God has restored all of that. Mm-hmm. And there's certain elements of my story that are really, really messy, and I hate. And people ask me, why do you even put that in there when you're telling the story? You could give it such a good testimony even without it. And I'm like, I don't want to diminish the consequences of my actions even a little bit, and thus diminish what God restored to my life. Yeah. And so I've gotten so many messages from people like that just needed that encouragement, or needed a laugh in a time of the depressing time in their life. And I didn't expect that, and I certainly didn't expect to be some sort of public figure in that realm, as little of it that as I've been able to delve into. Mm-hmm. But I get messages all the time for jokes that open somebody's eyes about some topic, or the way we treat other people, or anything like that. And so, honestly, to be really honest, if we were going back to day one when I started the account, I'm surprised that anybody responded to anything ever. Yeah. Just the fact that God was able to take such a stupid offhand thought of, I'll make a meme account, or I make a Twitter account, and something like that, and use that for his work, his good, his glory, and bringing people back to him. I'm just amazed that that was even possible. Yeah. I know with God all things are possible. Why would I think, a joke account would do anything, though?
Well, and a lot
I saw you.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Well, that's why I like asking that question, because there's so many times, that's all, everybody sees my account too. We just put funny memes out, and it's amazing how, like today even, we put one out about prayer, and it was more of a serious meme, but it was about prayer, and how many DMs I got in just about, what do you do in your prayer life? I want to go closer to God, verses on prayer. You just throw something out there thinking, okay, well, this is a thought in my head real quick, or this is something, I was reading in my devotions today, or something I would heard in a song. I'll just throw it out there. And then there are so many people that are just like, asking questions and don't have somebody to go to, or struggling with something and they don't, I mean, for your story, for example, like you said, somebody was sitting there with depression and they needed somebody to be like, they just needed whatever that was, that joke, your openness to give them enough courage for them to be open about it too. And that's just amazing to me that God uses something as silly as Instagram.
And he weaves that so well. Weaves that so well of getting people, in the right place to hear the right thing, to make them laugh or make them chuckle. And God's done that for me through my whole life too, and through my whole garbage when I was struggling. He used laughter a lot to bring me out of that, remind me that, hey, there's still good things in the world. There's still going to be humor in this world. It's worth continuing on. It's worth trying. And, that even as little as that little joke could be enough to just keep you going,
Well, especially with people's faces buried in their phones all the time, disconnected from other people. I mean, that would be enough to maybe get them to, like there's somebody else out there that's actually struggling with that. So, no, it's just amazing to me how he uses something like just as silly as this, that what we're doing to I mean, there's been people that have messaged me, and I'm sure you probably got similar messages that they go, hey, that changed my perspective on something, or this, we're doing this differently now because of whatever they've seen. And that's not just me. I mean, when I talk to the other meme accounts on here, we get the same thing. I mean, it's encouraging to me from your story as well, for you to be, even though you hate telling it, you don't like people to know that story, that him pushing you to be bold, it's affected other people's lives. I mean, people that you would have never met otherwise. And that's just so cool to me that that's a thing that happened. So,
yeah.
All right. So I like to ask everybody this question when they come on the show, because everybody's in different areas of the country. Everybody obviously has experienced different things, brought up in the church differently. But what would you say currently right now would be the biggest issue that's happening in Christianity today?
You made me aware that you were going to ask this question.
Yes, and,
I did. I've been thinking about it a lot. Honestly, I think our biggest problem as a church body is that we are too afraid to open up with fellow believers. We wear, the common trope of, wearing a mask when we come to church. But that's not ever what church was designed to be. James 5:16, I think it is, it's confess your sins to each other, pray for each other so that you may be healed. When you're struggling with something, when you have a sin, when you have an addiction, when you have a habit or a hurt or something that's keeping you from God, you confess that to God, you get the grace, you get the forgiveness. But God says, it's in the book, the healing begins with your brothers and sisters in Christ. Mm-hmm. And we're so afraid of letting our guard down and being vulnerable, letting people know that we have struggles, that we have problems, that we wear that mask every Sunday. And when you come to church and you feel like you want to unburden yourself, half the time you're more likely to get ostracized from the church for admitting that you have a problem than you are to find anybody willing to help you. And so we're all too afraid. We're all too afraid to open up. And because we get into that mindset of having to protect ourselves, that then echoes outwardly to how we treat the world around us. And so then we have people whose entire identity is, going online and arguing with unbelievers. It's protesting and yelling and spitting the word of God out of your mouth like bile from your tongue, which is never the way that God's word should be spread. Even Jesus, the only time that he ever called people vipers or flipped tables or anything like that, got angry, was when they were people who were pretending to be believers, pretending that they had everything together and that they knew better than he did about the works of God. All the people that didn't believe, all the people that lived differently or were searching for something, he gave them nothing but love. And that's how we should be treating all these other people. We wrap it all up in our politics and oh gosh, the politics, the whole season. Can't stand it. I cannot stand it. And the way we treat each other, we commingle that with our with our faith, the faith and the politics thing, this is not supposed to go together that closely, because there's no political party, whether you stand Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever, that will accurately reflect the faith and the values and the morals of the Bible and the faith that you have in God. And so we compromise little by little in order to protect what we think we have to protect. And that has just made it so terribly difficult for those outside of that group to want to desire to be a part of our, our life, our culture, our community. And then within the community, it has made people so scared to ever admit that they struggle or that they have doubts or that they need help. And so it's even driving people away from going to church, coming to small groups or anything like that, because what's the point?
Yeah. No, and
if people can listen to messages, sermons all the time, and yeah, they can get a lot out of it, but there's a key component missing without a open body of Christ that is willing to be real, be honest, share the struggles, and encourage each other and help them grow.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the interesting thing with that, with your response, is one, that seems to be the common theme of a lot of responses that I've asked. So either it's authenticity or it's openness. So it's encouraging that we're seeing that. I'll be interested to see how that develops, as far as we obviously recognize it as an issue. So what are we going to do about it, kind of thing. I was having this last Wednesday at Bible study, me and this other guy were talking, and that's basically what I said. I was like, so people, I don't know where you're from, but in my area, they have scheduled revivals. So we're like, we have a fall revival and a spring revival, which I just think is hilarious because we'll be like, all right, God, in this 3 days, you can come, but don't mess with that stuff. But anyway, so I was talking about that. I was just like, first of all, if you want revival, right, why don't we first start, like you said, just being open with one another? Because it's crazy to me that you can go to church with somebody for literally a decade and not actually know them. I mean, you know
not know anything beyond their basic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they've never opened up to anybody about their junk ever for 10 years. And then you expect God to do something when everybody's like, well, I got to tell you what I deal with. And I mean, I've found, honestly, most non-Christians are far more open than Christians. I mean, they're just like, yeah, I do this and this. Yep, that's me. And they're just very, I mean, again, there's no shame in it. They haven't repented of it. They're not scared of any wrath from God, but they're very open about it. So it's, I mean, I think, like you said, that openness to just be able to say, hey, here's my junk in a, like you said, in a controlled fashion. I mean, you're just not going to get online and just black it out.
Yeah, sure. Don't get on a soapbox and be like, here are all my greatest problems. I slipped into a bit of that mindset at one point when I got a little overly hyped about it, and drove a couple people away from the church. Just be like, hey, you know what I've been dealing with this week? Blah.
Yeah.
But
I
no,
mean,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, being, like you said, just being open and honest and transparent. And like you said, I mean, so what struck me when you were talking earlier, where you said that some people say, well, you don't have to tell all of it because it's still a good testimony without it. But you were very like, no, I don't want to take anything away from it about what God's done. And I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, if we want people to realize how great our God is, right? So how, in the deepest pit he can bring you out of, I mean, we need to be really open about it. I mean, and like you said, you're not telling everybody that most of the time. I mean, most of the time it's going to be that group of people that you're in the body with. But being okay with that. I mean, so how do you think, let's follow-up question to that, and I didn't warn you that this was going, but so what do you think are the best ways then to initiate that? So like we've already acknowledged, I think everybody knows that we need to be more open. So what are ways that you've seen or maybe you're a part of that people can learn from, that you say, okay, well, we know what the problem is. Let's start some solutions to it.
Essentially, what I would say to start with is just a baseline would be active small groups. Mm-hmm. A lot of churches have, what they call maybe life groups or something like that. It originally started as a Sunday school class or something like that.
We just changed the name.
But where you not only meet on Sundays, but you actually go and do things together throughout the week. We had we started a program called Celebrate Recovery at our church, and this was a program that I started going to when I was working in my addiction at a different church. But we started one at our church, and all of us leaders, most of the people that are in the program who start to be leaders when you just started in a church, they've never been through the program before. They're just willing to kind of facilitate what they can. But everybody that I've ever known who joins that program just to help, not to be involved, eventually God gets them to realize, hey, you're struggling with this too. Why don't you do the program while you're here? And so what we decided is that our small group of the church, which was also mostly made up of the same people that were helping out with Celebrate Recovery, we're going to do this study together. There's an outside of the normal meeting, there's a step study thing with 4 workbooks, and where you're really asking some very tough questions about your past, about your present, about what you want for the future, and you're expected to speak your answers out loud in front of everybody in the group, and it's separated into men and women, but to be open and honest. And so we're like, let's do this together. We'll just lay all of our garbage out on the table, and we'll see what God does with it. And God grew us closer together. I've never been that close to people in church before, to anybody in church before. And just that willingness to be open, to know that we're all flawed, to know what our struggles are so we can help protect each other when things come up that we know, oh, I know that might trigger them, that might make them depressed when something comes up, or seeing a certain person, it might make their day bad. Let's go alongside them and make sure that they're okay. All that kind of thing where we're aware of what everybody else is dealing with. At any given moment, we can be empathetic to a point that we never have gotten to before in church, to where we can really feel what other people are feeling, which is exactly what I think God meant for us to do as a church. Amen. He wanted us to be, when he calls us one body, I'm aware of my arms, I'm aware of my legs, I'm aware of everything that's happening. And that's kind of what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be active and aware of each other and protecting each other, not just outwardly, but inwardly in the heart. And so a small group situation where it is designed to make you open up, I think, is the ideal starting point. And it's really quick, man. If you can do that, over a couple of months, you're set with that group of people. You're set with growing. You're set with understanding and having empathy. And it really changes your perspective of the unbelieving world. When I see people who I can list all the different issues that we have, but when I see other people that so firmly believe that their position is right, but it's against God, I don't come at it anymore as seeing, they're an enemy of God, and I should shout them down and argue them out and all that. I see it as, I wonder how they got to that point. I wonder what happened in their life that led them to that conclusion. And thinking in that mind frame can help you realize what tragedy, what struggle, what pain they got through that led them there, and help you then to reach out to them in a way that is more loving, more caring, more focused on their soul and not their sins, And so, small group that is designed to make you open up.
Nice. Super well said there, too, about their soul and not their sins. That's very insightful. I would imagine, too, I don't know if this has happened, but when you were talking, I would imagine that maybe, too, since you're already being open with other Christians in your church that obviously have a myriad of other things that they've been through that aren't maybe your experience, they're probably have gone through something that maybe one of your unbeliever friends have gone through, and you can say, hey, I know somebody that's, it just seems like to me that would be, if God can use a Twitter and Instagram account, God can use an open group where, hey, I haven't been through this, but, I can tell you that somebody that has, and they, it actually brought them closer to God or something like that. And I just can see that working out in so many different ways that, again, we don't anticipate, but when we are open with one another, when we're actually the body, like you said, so it's not just Sally that I go to church with. It's like you said, I know what triggers you. I know what you've been through. I care. I actually care about you. You're not just somebody I go to church with. I actually care about who you
Absolutely.
are.
Absolutely.
And I think that, like you said, it makes you so much more empathetic because you know not only what they've gone through, but like what you said, what triggers them. So you know, hey, this is probably they're going to have a struggle this week because of that. And you can actually be there for them, which is just, again, we say that, let's do life, which is a cliche phrase, but I mean, that's really what it is. It's, you're living with those people. And I can't tell you how helpful for me just having a group of guys to talk through things has been there's been times, I've told my wife this before, and I've told my pastor once, there's been times, I have a son, he's 3, and occasionally he cries and he wants to go to the nursery. And I've been like, hey, I'll take him because the other guys are in there with their kids. And I'm like, I want to go chat with him because I'm not going to have time this week to talk to him. I'll take the kid. But, I mean, again, it's, I think the church really craves that community. And, I mean, it's amazing, like, just from what you said, where just getting to know people, especially, like you said, in that situation where it's forced. Like, you're here, we're going to deal with your junk. It's not a surprise. This is what we're doing. Just what amazing things that can do. Is there, obviously you don't want to get into anybody's story personally, but is there something in the next, maybe we got about 10 minutes here, that you can say that came from a situation in a group like that was, that changed the whole course of maybe somebody's life? Do you have anything like that?
Well, as I said, we're very active with Celebrate Recovery. We're Backward Radio hypes that all the time because I'm now the ministry leader of the Celebrate Recovery at my church, and Megan Moe was up until recently a state representative, because this is a program that's worldwide, state representative for New Mexico, and our group is made up of both people that come of their own volition and people that are required to come by the state. So we actually actively get a lot of unbelievers that walk into our church
because they have to
every single week. Yeah, every single week because they have to. And I'd love to say that all of them find healing and all of them find God, and it's great. And of course that's not the case. But every now and then, every few months, we get somebody where they have now experienced a community that is completely unlike anything else. Because Celebrate Recovery is essentially an entire church service. It's recovery themed, but it's essentially a whole service. It's an entire night, and it's church like I feel like it's supposed to be, because everybody comes in there knowing we're all messed up.
Yeah,
and
there's no hiding it.
There's no hiding it, and you should see how that unhinders you in worship, man. My worship pastor John, he leads it for CR and for Sunday. He prays that one Sunday he'll have a Sunday that's like a Thursday night any given week, because these people it unhinders you. It unhinders that burden. You really feel what God is trying to talk to you. You're not there by mistake. And to see that, for an unbeliever to see that change, to see that openness, and to see Christians acting in a way that you don't see outwardly at a normal church service or from Christians in the media or anything like that, it changes their perspective of what faith is, what God is, what God can be in your life. And so every now and then, man, it clicks with somebody and they accept Christ and they really start working, and it starts with the fact that they've seen people be open and honest, that they're Christians that don't pretend to be perfect and that don't judge you for the garbage in your past, because they have that garbage too, and they're willing to admit to it and own up to it. Wear your heart on your sleeve kind of thing. And again, that reminds me of NF, because that's exactly what he does with lots of his songs. That's why he says he's popular, because he wears his heart on his sleeve. And that is really the mindset that you need to be in, I think, for a lot of unbelievers, when all you see from all the other sides and every other part of the world is just angry Christians, angry Christians yelling. And unfortunately, and I know that that's not the majority of believers all the time. We see the media, will often put the loudest,
whoever makes
most annoying Christians, out on the front. And there are quite a few people that are very loving and very empathetic, but you don't see that when you're not a part of it. And so I think to see that vulnerability, that's something that a lot of unbelievers do need to see. And so I always try whenever I see somebody make a decision for Christ in our program, which happens usually a couple times a year. I always try to really make sure that I follow up with them and that we keep them active and keep them encouraged and try and walk them through both a new belief system and their recovery process to keep them coming back. So, I mean, I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yeah, no,
I'm not
you're
sure.
good.
I kind of went on a tangent of my own.
No, you're good. And I don't want to interrupt you when you're saying it, but like the whole worship part of it. I mean, I remember we had to celebrate recovery at the church that my parents went to when I was in high school. And I remember as a teenager, there was a distinct difference in worship between the people that came, had been in church forever and those people that came on Sunday morning that were through that program. I mean, I remember because it was an old Methodist church, and I mean it was just just singing the hymns in the same note the whole time at the same volume. And then these guys came in from Celebrate Recovery. I mean, hands up, loud praise. I mean, because they knew how much they had been forgiven, and they couldn't hold that in. I mean, they knew.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to praise.
Exactly.
And it was a little mind blowing for me as a teenager, going, "Well, okay, this is distinctively different. What's going on here?"
I'm kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which side I need to be on here.
This guy's shouting for Jesus with his hands up, and Ethel's over here singing the same hymn she sang for the last 50 years. I don't know what's going on. And I mean, obviously, as I've grown up in that process and seeing that happen in people's lives, I mean, there's a distinct. I mean, it's crazy different how people worship. So, before we get cut off here, I want to make sure that people have an opportunity. Is there a way to maybe support this Back Row Radio if they were interested in doing that? Maybe.
Absolutely. Back Row Radio doesn't exist without our Patreons. We luckily had a good group of Patreons that helped us start. And so currently we're making enough through our donations that we're able to keep it running and add a few songs each week. But we would like to do a whole lot more with it. Our current goal, Patreon goal, is to make it to about $600 a month in donations, which would enable us to do a whole lot more, enable us to do more interviews and upgrade some of our falling apart equipment and advertise a little bit too, but also make some stuff, give some stuff away, do some more giveaways and things of that nature. Really fun stuff that big radio stations get to do all the time, and we try and do here and there when we can. So that would be the normal Patreon, patreon.com/backrowradio. We also have a Linktree page
on your page.
Linktree.backrowradio on our Instagram page. That's got all the links to everything that we do, including the Patreon page. But it's that's the main way to support. Other than that, word of mouth, spreading the word that the radio station exists, giving it a listen yourself, stream it in your car, stream it in your work. Have a good old time.
Yeah. I've streamed it a few times, and you're not joking. Like, it goes from one genre to the next genre to the next genre to the next. Like, it was all over the place. So it was interesting. Like,
but it was fun, right?
Yes, it was fun. And there were I'm talking about the indie radio, like the indie songs too. I mean, there were a lot of stuff on there. I mean, I have frankly never heard before in my life, but it was good. Like, it was good music. So
yeah, we do that with the indie. We also like to do that with the mainstream artists and throw some deep tracks in there from the albums that never made it to radio that were amazing stuff too.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of that as well, and we have we have some of the best stuff out there. We have the mainstream and the singles and whatnot that in there too mixed in. It's not all new stuff.
Yeah.
You'll find a good balance, but yeah, we enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna before we get cut off here, I want to thank you for being on here. Appreciate it. Appreciate what you do. It's just been really interesting to see the journey from the Twitter account to an online radio station and just that whole story between there. So thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it.
It's a strange one, yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for having me on, man.
No problem. All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
All right, God bless.
Have it. All right, guys, so that was Back Row Radio. Make sure you go just check out their page. Like you said, stream that, check it out, and if you like it, go support them. Interesting idea. Like you said, there's not a lot of stuff out there like what they're doing, so check that out as well. Next week, we're going to have Candace Payne on here. You probably know her as Chewbacca Mom. She'll be on here. We're going to talk to her about a lot of stuff as well. Joy, kind of what she does, her podcast, and all the things like that. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for following. If if you guys have any suggestions about who you'd like to see, go ahead and DM me. I've got next month lined up too, and then we're going to take December off. But next year we're looking to kind of upgrade the Instagram live show a little bit more as well. So looking forward to that. But I'm looking for people that if you're interested in having on here, I'm cool with DMing and saying, hey, you want to jump on. The people that follow would like to hear from you. So thank you for following. Like I said, go check out Back Row Radio, the Instagram account. So it's great. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night.